Sundial. More like FUNDIAL. Crank it up to 11.
Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video, and this is actually Phil from the future. I'm re-recording this deck tech after the fact. I had a headache this morning and I messed up some rules interactions here, so I want a cleaner deck tech for you all. So this one's going to be a little more nuanced, and I'm going to kind of tease some things that are coming later on in the video in this one. Now, Sasha donated to see a Sundial of the Infinite deck, which I have edited ever so slightly, and I preempted a couple of problems that I was going to come across that actually ended up being very correct about later on in the league. So the idea here is that Sundial of the Infinite is a way for you to keep your Phyrexian Dreadnoughts around. You cast Phyrexian Dreadnought for 1 mana, and then with its trigger on the stack, you just end the turn via Sundial of the Infinite, and it's kind of cute. And normally you have to use an entire card to keep your Dreadnought in play with some sort of consign or stifle, or even dress down kind of consumes the entire card. But the idea is that Sundial of the Infinite can be used multiple times. Sasha's original build had 4 copies of Solitude in it, which I immediately cut. I understand the logic of wanting to be able to evoke this, sundial it, and keep it. However, this deck, and I'll count the Null Drifter that I added to the deck, this deck runs a ton of colorless cards, and also a ton of blue cards. Trying to make the deck also run enough white cards to make Solitude consistent seemed like way too tough of an ask, so I cut Solitude from the initial build, and I believe I added in 4 copies of Swords to Plowshares and 1 Null Drifter. The Null Drifter is a slot that I ended up regretting. I wanted something else that could be a draw 2 cards effect, similar to the stock-ups that were already in the list that would take advantage of Ancient Tomb, but a lot of times things got stuck in my hand in the mid-game, including the stock-ups. As the way this league plays out, this is largely an Urza Saga deck that backs up Urza Saga with Force of Will and Force of Negation, which is not something that I was expecting looking at the deck list. I was expecting way more Phelia, Quantum Riddler, Blink stuff to be central to this league, and I was just quite frankly wrong. Sasha's mana base originally had a few different flex lands in there, and I added more fetchables into the deck. The original deck list had 2 Tundras, a Plains, an Island, and a Meticulous Archive as fetchables, and I went up another Tundra, dropping a Caracas in process because I was worried about running out of fetchable lands. Trying to play Urza Saga and Ancient Tomb at the same time in your Brainstorm Ponder deck is actually really, really hard on the mana base. And while you can get away with the first 4 of these without really noticing it, and you often do, you often see, a blue-white control deck with a handful of copies of Wastelands, that sort of play pattern is very common. Having 8 colorless lands in your 2-color deck, even if one of those colors isn't necessarily used all of the time, is rough. And throughout this league, you will see a handful of times where I do not have the blue-blue to cast something like Force of Negation or Quantum Riddler. Awkwardly, the deck is also a Wrath of the Skies deck that is playing a bunch of stuff that wants to sit in play once it is around. And specifically in the context of current Legacy, where the Fantastic card deals you exactly 16 damage, in playing a blue-white control deck, the hope is that they 16 you, you get to your turn with about 2 life, and then you can drop a Wrath of the Skies and clean up all of those tokens. When you're the Ancient Tomb deck, that play pattern doesn't happen as much anymore. So there was definitely some tension there. The next thing I want to cover is the timing of how you have to use Sundial of the Infinite, because this is not something that is obvious. And headachy me this morning missed an interaction. So, it is your main phase. You warp in Quantum Riddler, you draw 1 or 2 cards, and you end the turn with Sundial of the Infinite. The warp triggers at the beginning of the next end step. So if you main phase Quantum Riddler and then end the turn with Sundial, on your opponent's end step, Quantum Riddler will warp out, which is an incredibly awkward interaction. The same sort of thing is true with Phelia. It says at the beginning of the next end step. Because you are fully just ending the turn, you don't go to these other steps, right? So if you blink out something with Phelia on your end step, on your combat step, you need to wait until the Phelia trigger is on the stack at the end of turn to activate Sundial of the Infinite, or the thing comes back. This is also something that I do once in the league before I wise up to it. I also made some small changes to the sideboard. I think I have a relatively decent set of sideboard cards here, and I think I used literally every single card that's in the sideboard over the course of this league. It is possible that something like an Erode should be here, as having additional answers to Tamiyo Planeswalker is kind of a big deal. And this is something that I bring up a couple points throughout the video, but we can answer it a handful of ways with the existing cards. It's just awkward if it slips through. So in advance, I apologize for headachy Phil not playing the tightest set of Magic games today. There's still some absolute shenanigans in here. I recommend round 3 as the round where my own deck pops off the hardest. It pops off so hard that my mistakes that I make are forgiven. And in round 4, my opponent is playing a sweet deck that looks like something that was played on this channel recently that you all enjoyed. So those are my 2 recommended rounds. And as always, folks, if you need any Magic cards, please consider getting them from my sponsor, toamagic.com. And when you do, use promo code ThrabenU to save yourself a little bit on your order. That reminds me, I need to go check my own mail because my package from TOA should be here today. I've got a commander deck to update. Actually, it's more like 5 commander decks to update. Yeah, like, you know how it is, right? It's never just one deck, right? All right, with that being said, enjoy the league. Let's battle. All right. Opening hand has 1 land and it's colorless. That is not going to cut it. Oh, this is totally fine. I probably keep this and pitch 1 blue card. The Brainstorm loses a lot of value if I can't Brainstorm and fetch, and I've got 2 colorless lands here. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I could alternatively pitch like the Urza Saga, and then have the ability to ponder and Force of Will pitch Brainstorm. I don't get an opportunity to counter very many spells against this deck. But now the next question is, do I just want to play Urza Saga on 1 and Ancient Tomb on 2? I have a main deck Pithing Needle, right? I do. I might want to work towards that. It's just like awkward if I start working towards main deck Pithing Needle and then my opponent flips down their own Urza Saga. But I think I'm doing this anyway. By the way, Sasha wanted a trans rights shout out, which I am always happy to do. Oh, goddamn psychic. All right. Reball. Well, I'm going down this Ancient Tomb route, so I have something to do for the next couple of turns. Sundial? Sundial, keep my Urza Saga around forever? Oh, I didn't even think of that. That's just a thing, too. That's sweet. I think in the known Wasteland matchup, I don't do that, despite the fact that I could use all 3 mana this turn to do this. I think I'm just going to make my Construct tokens, but that's sweet. Anyway, back to the basic human rights for a minute. I was updating my media kit yesterday, and I think including the fact that I do charity fundraising as something that is important to me, and that all right, well, we're never going to get through this anecdote. But in kind of looking at some of the numbers from my past fundraising, with the 3 different charity things that I have done, I believe my lifetime money raised through my own charity events is $70,000 for, well, split between Trans Lifeline. What is this? Boseiju? Nice. Split between Trans Lifeline and the Trevor Project. So that's pretty cool. I think I'm going to take the basic here. So the hope is, oh, fuck, I'm going to have to fetch with this. I think I messed up. I think this was supposed to be basic plains, and this was supposed to be basic island, because I have to fetch here in respect of Pithing Needle. Do I if this still taps for green? Maybe I don't if this still taps for green. If you Pithing Needle me and then crop rotation away your Yavimaya, you earned it. Otawara gets discarded. There's really good stuff in the graveyard over there. And it's not in the graveyard anymore. So now I just have recurring Urza Saga to deal with and known Wasteland. I'm in very bad shape. I can't really multi-spell for Dreadnought. I think I need to draw a land this turn to get Sundial into play, which did not happen. I think at this point, I have effectively lost to Sphere plus Wasteland and Urza Saga Recursion. I think it takes 5 turns for the game to be over, but my opponent has got it here. GG's. We can get the Force of Negations and Rest in Pieces into the deck to help out with this sort of nonsense. And I can consider Wrath of the Skies for opposing Urza Saga Construct tokens, and Prismatic Ending for various things. So I guess I want to figure out what don't I want here. The answer might be Force of Will. My blue count can still probably be okay if I board out Force of Will. I think my opponent's got really good tools for this matchup, because presumably there's things like tutorable Caracas for Phelia, tutorable Mazavith for Dreadnought, Boseiju is a thing that messes with my permanents, including the Rest in Peace. Let's assume that this is a little harder to set up through Sphere of Resistance. I don't know that I get to cut any more blue cards if I'm already going to cut Force of Will in particular. 20 is not as bad as I thought it was going to be, actually. Maybe I could cut one more blue card. I might turn a Swords into a Prismatic Ending that answers Exploration, and then go down 1 stock up because they are worse under Spheres. I could do something like bring in an additional threat as well, if I feel like Dreadnought is not going to be the most reliable. But having to hard cast this at 6 or 7 mana due to Spheres is awkward, so I'm not quite sure where I want to end up there. Opening hand is okay. It needs another land to get to stock up. I don't have anything cheesy to do with Sundial. This might just be a mulligan. I think it is. The second hand tries to do something broken on turn 2. So I think I will just keep this. I think I'm getting rid of Pithing Needle, despite the fact that Pithing Needle on Wasteland is pretty sweet. And hopefully my opponent does not have the tools to answer a Phyrexian Dreadnought that comes down on turn 2, because that sure is what I'm doing. Maybe Pithing Needle is better than stock up. Well, there's a Boseiju played out as a land. There's that darn Exploration card. And there is a Wasteland. Sure. So now I need another land to get Dreadnought into play successfully. Which I could do 2 different ways. And a Malevolent Rumble. Alright, what's my opponent looking at? Oh god. So, there is Loam Wasteland. My opponent can also pick up Sphere of Resistance here. And my opponent has access to... I don't let them tutor. Like, when they have Life from the Loam, the tutors are so much worse than normal. So I will just counter that. But I'm in such terrible shape to like Life from the Loam Wasteland Blast Zone. Or are we? So, because I have gotten Wastelanded already, I can't Pithing Needle Blast Zone and still get this Dreadnought into play this turn. So I guess stopping Blast Zone is priority 1. Alright. You know what? We're done here. We're done here. I'm keeping my cards. Turn's over. But that sure doesn't let me cast my Pithing Needle. That is kind of essential to the whole Blast Zone thing. Alright, Life from the Loam returns Wasteland, which is problematic for other reasons. And longer term, my opponent can Wasteland themselves, get Boseiju into Graveyard, and then like take out my Pithing Needle and then Blast Zone away Dreadnought. I could get greedy and try to Brainstorm and make a land drop here. That feels important so that I can Dreadnought next turn, and it's just disastrous if I miss. And it's just disastrous if I miss. Fantastic. So let's go bam bam, archive, stock up to Graveyard and pass turn. Now there's just a Boseiju in there. Alright, it's over. My opponent gets to fuck with my artifacts and lands in every possible way, and I know that I have to, like, brainstorm through things again. And I get bogged, just in case we are doing something like flow state as well. Yeah. Boseiju recursion plus Wasteland recursion plus Blast Zone recursion. That's a lot. My opponent has clearly got this one here. The lands deck eats the slow blue deck alive. Classic legacy play pattern. GG's. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and I love them. I have over 1,000 deck lists here. And I think the thing that I like the most about them is they're more than just a basic deck builder. If you need information about your next pre-release or where you can get cards, they have that sort of stuff here too. Whether you need to manage your collection or just a couple of decks, Moxfield does it all. So go check them out. Okay, opening hand here has one land, no cantrips to hit the second land. I think we have to say no to that. This is fine. So turn 1, Island Ponder, maybe look for a counter spell, turn 2, Dreadnought off of Saga, and consign it. I am good with this. I have to put a card on bottom, either Brainstorm or Riddler. I think I'm going to go Riddler. I don't super see myself using that card in the early game here, and we're hoping that there is no late game by deploying a Dreadnought on turn 2. I'm looking for Force of Will to pair with this Brainstorm. None of those cards are Force of Will. I will shuffle that. That is also not Force of Will. So the annoying thing that could happen here is that a Thoughtseize taking my Dreadnought makes my entire hand fall apart pretty much instantly. Underground Sea. Last turn, though. Excellent. Are we still just doing the thing? I could wait on it here. Underground Sea is so ambiguous right now for what it is. So for example, if my opponent is Doomsday, just shoving a 12-12 means that Doomsday past the turn lines are off, and my opponent could just 16 me. I can hold up Consign to play around the Fantasticar. I think I'm shoving and getting Urza Saga in play that can work towards a second shove attempt. So here is a Dreadnought, and here is the Consign. That is a Daze. So this first attempt doesn't work. And that is okay. It is so hard to try and do anything cute when you have to respect just getting 16'd out of nowhere. Like, it can still happen even though my opponent has 0 lands in play, right? Like, Dark Ritual, Fantasticar, Bobble, or anything like that is still just totally live here. There's a Polluted Delta that'll shuffle away something from the Brainstorm. All right, it is Doomsday. Opponent doesn't have a combo immediately. Or I get to make fun of them for being a second main phase hipster, which is always great. The Sundial is probably the best card in my hand. It's what allows me to keep the Phyrexian Dreadnought that is brewing. And my opponent agrees. I would love to naturally spike a land here. I did not. I think I am going to go pondering for another land drop, or alternatively a force effect. Alright, I take the land drop, but I can't cast Sundial before I have to sacrifice this Urza Saga, so I think I'm getting rid of the other stuff. And presumably, if my opponent puts a Doomsday or Fantasticar on the stack, I Brainstorm. Otherwise, I Surveil land, looking for either a counter spell or a Consign to Memory to keep a Dreadnought around. My opponent is at 15, so I do just need to hit them once. That is a flow state that is already online. And I've talked about this recently in videos, but the generic Dimir shell right now, being able to play Thoughtseize, Daze, Force of Will, Flow State, and or Tamiyo in some combination is just so incredibly good. I'm gonna fetch. I could just Brainstorm now. I think I like that better than Surveiling. I can shuffle away something off the Brainstorm with the Urza Saga trigger. Oh god. Alright, well that just is what it is. I can Brainstorm again, and then shuffle away Ancient Tomb and one of these lands, and potentially still spike Consign. I'm in for that. Yeah. No, just more lands. Okay. Wow, that was bad, folks. That was about as bad as possible. I have nothing to pair with the Dreadnought, so we are getting Pithing Needle. And I think we are doing this rather sad play. Throw a land into play. I will do a skateboard on the off chance that it enables a Dreadnought to get haste or something in the future, and we can surveil land before our next turn. We are fully shields down to opposing combo, and it looks like that's happening. Fetch land comes down. There's the Fantasticar. This is spell 3. That is spell 4, and I don't have a game 1 out to that. I have Wrath of the Skies for the post-sideboard games, but my opponent will get this one here. GG's. My deck failed me on that one. Those were some rough brainstorms. So, I would like Consign and Force of Negation for sure. I potentially need some number of cards to respect some combination of Tamiyo's, Barrow-Goyf's, Murktide Regents. That could just be Rest in Peace that also respects flow state at the same time, because my opponent's flow states are way more efficient than my stock-ups are. And I also just have the downside here of being the less interactive deck, which is funny to say because, like, I'm clearly a control deck, but my opponent has better tools being in black for Thoughtseize, so it's easier for them to punch a hole. I assume that Ending is going to go. Null Drifter gets cut for not being a proper blue card. Note that the full-on, like, optimized blue-white Phelia Blink deck only evenly trades games versus Doomsday, despite being, like, specifically targeting it. And we have a lot of cute slots in our deck. Needle can probably go here. Lavinia is okay. I certainly want Wrath of the Skies. I assume I trim a Dreadnought. I could just stop being cute here. Do this. Get Triumph, Lavinia. A Phelia out for a Lavinia. 2 more Phelias out for 2 more Rest in Peace. Just everything is hateful. You'll lose anyway because Doomsday is so strong right now. Yikes. These hands are just not keepable. So we are down to 5 already. In Skateboard we trust. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Riddler goes back. I could keep Tundra over second Urza Saga, so that I can cast things that look like Stock Up and Ponder and whatnot. Perhaps I don't need the second Urza Saga. 1 set of Construct tokens is maybe enough. But like this slow Urza Saga game with no additional supporting artifacts is not really where I want to be. And if I have to use something like Wrath of the Skies later on to clear out Fantasticar tokens, it will sweep up my own Urza Saga tokens. More importantly, anytime I keep an Urza Saga Ancient Tomb hand, the Fantasticar kills me in 1 hit, and I don't get that second turn to Wrath of the Skies them out. I've drawn another Ancient Tomb. Not what I want, but I'll play one of them. And then opponent will surveil at end of turn. They've kept a card, which if I'm in their position, I want some sort of Thoughtseize effect to just kind of see what's going on. If I've kept an Urza Saga hand, it probably means that I have a counter spell. And they're just passing the turn. I will make my robot friend. Nice. I will make my more other robot friend. Opponent will probably fetch here as to not get Polluted Delta hit with a Pithing Needle. They don't, but I've boarded out my Pithing Needle. Tilt, 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 tilt. I will attempt to tap down Delta. Opponent does Brainstorm, and then fetches to clear, and grabs Underground Sea. I have a very respectable amount of incoming damage. I am at exactly 16 life because of tapping Ancient Tomb twice. In my opening hand, I opted to keep the Tundra so that I could cast blue cards if I needed to. This does now mean that I don't have another Urza Saga token to attack next turn. So this is lethal over 2 more turns instead of 1, because I opted to want to be able to cast the blue spells in my deck, and we'll see whether or not I lose the game for that. Cavern of Souls comes down, and my Force of Negations are not going to counter a Barrow-Goyf, unfortunately. It's currently a 3-4. That does resolve. So now I'm kind of in this unfortunate position where I don't know what land I want to play, and if I cast Stock Up without playing a land drop, it can just get dazed, which is a disaster. So for example, if I stock up and I hit an Urza's Saga, I really, really, really want to play that Urza Saga, but I just think I can't risk this getting dazed. So there is stock up, which I can't protect with Force of Negation as of right now, which is real rough. My opponent forces pitching a consign. That occurs. I'm not going to attack here. My current plan is, like, very sadly double block a Barrogoyf. Unless if my opponent attacks, I could surveil and see if I have a removal spell on top. I think I'll do that. I know what sort of stuff I'm looking for anyway. Phelia is probably not it. Phelia is probably not it. I will accordingly double block this Goyf. It was already going to kill both of these anyway due to Death Touch. So there being one more card type in the graveyard for creature doesn't actually matter with the Phelia Surveil. Opponent ponders and casts a flow state, which I might just need to Force of Negation. I'm just running on fumes here. I'm going to put myself into a situation where if I draw a Riddler, I have an empty hand and can draw a couple of cards. Didn't happen. So this makes the fair stuff way worse. And I'll hold Ancient Tomb in case I can brainstorm it back. But I'm now shields down to the combo. Yeah, there we go. So my opponent gets to build a Doomsday pile that I guess it can't involve Cavern of Souls on Wizard, so that's at least good. I could very easily see my opponent building a Fantasticar line for next turn. Like, if they have enough fuel to just transform the Fantasticar, they can just 16 me. Although, is there a difference between a Fantasticar and a Thassa's Oracle thing next turn? Like, deal 16 to my face versus just win the game. Both get hit by a consign if you can't defend it. Alright. Pile is made. I don't see Fantasticars. There are a handful of Barrogoyfs here. Well, let's try to find something that interacts with something. So if I brainstorm, I look at Force of Will, Urza Saga, and one other card. If that one other card is a blue card, I have a piece of interaction, but a piece of interaction that my opponent can probably beat. I don't have, like, lethal with Urza Saga Skateboard. I might just be trying to hit something like a consign. I think I'm just going to shuffle these. Whiff. I think the upside of being able to just hit consign and cast it off of this land is relatively high. Maybe I should try the Force of Will line. I'm also just fully expecting my opponent to have protection for their combo. Like, I could sit here and count it all out. But at a glance, I did not see enough Thought Seizes, so I think they just have one of those. Brainstorm occurs. Yeah, I see 2 Thought Seizes at a quick glance. Alright, that is just the Thassa's Oracle. That will do it there. GG's. As always, play Doomsday until they ban something from that deck, i.e. the Fantasticar. Maybe I should be mulliganing more, but it kind of feels like my deck is playing out as slow Urza Saga deck with Force of Will backup, rather than deck that shoves Dreadnought and kills quickly, or, oh wow, or deck that assembles Phelia plus Riddler. That sort of stuff just is not happening. Opponent fetches. It's a mighty fancy basic planes you've got there. And I currently do not have removal. I also could, like, brainstorm and just not get blue cards to Force of Will afterwards, so I think I'm going to surveil and see if I have removal coming, which I do not. I will say no to that and, like, sadly Force of Will. I just don't want that thing going. So I could draw another card fairly with Quantum Riddler right now while getting Urza Saga going, and then intend on just drawing or doing this later for 5 mana, which I guess is reasonable. I could also get Skateboard down this turn, but let's warp. Opponent says hello to YouTube. We are just off from aligning Phelia Quantum Riddler, and our Riddler warps out. If we had seen the Phelia off of the Surveil, we could just attempt to ambush Ocelot Pride instead. Well, rip my counterspells. Hexing Squelcher is now around, which we could maybe ambush with a Phelia. Although I might just be funneling mana into Urza Saga tokens right now. The disappearing Urza Saga lands kind of make it harder to cast 5 mana Quantum Riddler, huh? Although, I guess on the other hand, the Ancient Tombs make it easier. That's a Scion of Draco. So, as of right now, this is a 4/4 First Strike, Hexproof, Lifelink, Trample, Vigilance, Ward, pay 2 life. And all of these other creatures are getting other relevant keywords as well. So First Strike here means that Phelia can't ambush this creature anymore. Although opponent does not attack in, which I guess I am thankful for. I could flash in Phelia and leave open the line of attack, blink this out, and then be able to remove Scion of Draco. My robots are just not beating this in a fair capacity. Alright, it is more Urza Saga. I think I'm just floating a mana here and hoping Ponder does something cool. I don't have anything cool to do with a Phyrexian Dreadnought, so we just fully lose value on that Urza Saga. We only have 4 mana, not 5, towards Riddler. I can't cast Stock Up here. No, I could. I just have to play Urza Saga to do it. Alright, so I will Saga. I am not controlling my opponent's board well, and I'm not doing something unfair myself. Okay, a Swords is fine. I'm going to take Swords and Riddler. So I will pass the turn here, and the next turn I can attack, blink out the Leyline, remove Scion of Draco. The Ocelot Pride does not come in. These fly, I can't block. Well, rather this one flies, and this one has First Strike, more accurately speaking. And now my opponent just has so much stuff going that even if I remove just Scion of Draco, I don't really know that it's enough. Pick up a Consign. So land drop, combat, attack with Phelia, blink out the Leyline. Now, Scion is targetable. I just have to lose 2 life to do it. Alright, looks like my opponent is going to give me the choice of what I want to get rid of. Is it Guide of Souls? I think it's Guide of Souls, because I think these things getting flying would be the most disastrous. The rest of the stuff I can, in theory, stall out via something like Urza Saga or a large Quantum Riddler. Hopefully I've just stabilized. I could consign the Leyline coming back trigger. I don't think I'm going to. I think I want these Urza Saga bodies, but there's something to cutting my opponent off of red. I think at 10 life, I just have to respect my life total greatly here. And this will be my second disappearing Urza Saga that makes it harder to Quantum Riddler. I have some negative synergy in my deck, and I'm very much feeling it. Gonna be so many cats. I don't have game 1. Wrath of the Skies. Alright, this occurs. I am at 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I could also double consign Ocelot Pride triggers here. I will replicate this and counter both of these. And I keep my opponent from getting the City's Blessing in the short term. And now I think I just float mana and play a Riddler. I don't have extra mana that I can fetch off of this. So I'm not getting 2 bodies into play no matter what. Not in life total striking distance of closing the game either. I'm going to start pulling Dreadnoughts out of my deck. I don't think I want to draw them. Goodbye, Dreadnought. Fetch to 5. Grab another Tundra. I play the one of these from hand for full cost, specifically so that I can draw the other card immediately. Okay, this was the dream. The dream was draw Force of Will blue card. I don't know that I can get the board stable, though. Even not counting things like Goblin Bombardment. My opponent just makes cats if they just send everything in and attack. So I can, like, take 4 damage if I block an Ocelot Pride. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Do I just have to shut this Force of Will off immediately? Do not let my opponent accrue extra cats, probably. And because I had the disappearing Urza Saga thing, I am further away from this other Riddler now. I certainly can't deal 33 before my opponent kills me. I have 4 bodies to deal with, and I don't have game 1 Wrath of the Skies. Don't have a game 1 major life gain source. See if there's something I'm not thinking of that I see off of Brainstorm, but I think my opponent's just got it. Yeah, my opponent's just got it there. GG's. So now I can bring Wrath of the Skies in. I can bring in Triumph as a fair threat and Prismatic Ending. Hydroblast is a reasonable removal spell. Needle for Goblin Bombardment is a thing that matters. I think I'm going to get rid of Consign. I don't know, it's weird because I have Dreadnoughts that I, in theory, care about forcing through. Let's assume Force of Negation goes. I can go down some number of threats if I'm bringing in Triumphs. That probably means going down a Dreadnought and a Sundial. If I have time to set up, Sundial Urza Saga is pretty cool. Yeah, I think I'm going down on Consigns. Alright, I have a reasonable looking opening hand here. It has too much land. Like, I might have trouble emptying my hand for Quantum Riddler if I draw additional land on top of this. So I could start basic, turn 3 Wrath of the Skies, which seems reasonable. Grab Island and Ponder. No, I don't want additional lands. Thank you, deck. Very nice. Arid Mesa comes down from my opponent, and my opponent fetches, playing an Ocelot Pride, which in theory, my Wrath of the Skies will just answer. The Dreadnought feels like a terrible draw. Like, if in theory I have a Consign right now, I probably can't even just drop the Dreadnought because I expect it to get caught up in Wrath of the Skies in a minute. Notably, because I tried to open up this game on basic lands, on turn 3, I can't go white, Ancient Tomb to Wrath of the Skies for a higher amount of mana. I think it's still fine to play around Wasteland, but it is possible that a rather bad card for me could drop immediately this turn, and I end up having to wait one more turn to deploy Tropical Island. It's so weird saying Tropical Island Plateau. Alright, Hexing Squelcher resolves. We'll see whether or not my opponent attacks into Phelia. They do not. So then, I guess I'm not on a basic anymore. Sure. I'm a little flooded anyway, so go ahead and warp this on in. Force of Will is fine. Although most of what I would expect to clean up, I will just clean up with Wrath of the Skies. Force of Will, not really good until after Wrath of the Skies. Wooded Foothills comes down. Opponent will get their 3 combat damage. Plays Ajani, which is unfortunately uncounterable due to the Hexing Squelcher. And this is all fine as long as I clear up everything with Wrath of the Skies. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. That was a big swing. So now I can aggressively Force of Will something that is bad for me and stabilize the board with a Quantum Riddler next turn. And if I don't need to Force of Will, I just get 2 Quantum Riddlers, which will be bigger than my opponent's creatures on average. I am probably going to run into the I have trouble emptying my hand situation that I talked about earlier. Ooh, no play from my opponent. So what does that mean? Let's find out. Here's a Sundial of the Infinite. Here is a Phyrexian Dreadnought. I will simply end the turn. No play from my opponent. Turn's over. We're done. My opponent passed the turn with 5 mana available, 4 cards in hand. Were they expecting to do something to answer this Riddler? They have a bunch of situational things, like, say, a red elemental blast? Or is it just all lands? Resolves? Resolves. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is all pretty cute. So let's attempt to warp this one. Alright, I will successfully draw my card. It is just 1. Do it again. I could do it again and then end the turn and keep both. But then I don't have a blue card in hand. Yeah, turn's over. Good enough. This is hilarious. Where has this been all league? Why aren't more of my opponents playing slower decks so that I can do this fun nonsense? And now I get Phelia, blink your thing out, end the turn so that it doesn't come back. The Dirtle is here. What? For real? That's how that works? I'm upset. Is that also then not castable? I'm only showing one Quantum Riddler in Warp Zone. I'm extremely upset if this is how the rules work. Okay, it just didn't show up in the Warp Zone right away. Alright, we're good. The Sundial doesn't fully dance around the Quantum Riddler thing. I want this Quantum Riddler out of hand. I don't necessarily want to drop Force of Will blue card. I guess I can just hard cast, right? Counter it. I think I'll just counter that. It gets a card out of my hand, which lets me draw more cards. I'll force here. There's Red Elemental Blast, which was not just pointed at Riddler directly. I think I just don't mind losing to Phelia. I just have another, and I'm going to just draw more cards. So draw 2 off of this Riddler. Have 2 more draw 2s chilling in wait. I guess 3 if you count this one. So it seems like my opponent was waiting. Well, I was about to say it seems like they were waiting until they drew Hexing Squelcher to do something, but apparently not. Let's try to find a removal spell. No? Cards are not great. I guess I will play one of these Riddlers, redraw one of those cards, play a Pithing Needle, and we put that either on the backside of Ajani or Goblin Bombardment. I think I'm more afraid of this. Coddle Avenger. I don't want that slipping through. So my Force of Will that is currently in my hand and the Force of Will that is on top of my deck are not great. That is an uncounterable Solitude, so that will get my Quantum Riddler out of the way. Ultimately resulting in me taking a couple points of damage, but I end up gaining life in this turn cycle, so it's not really the end of the world. Now I have, 5+2? So I can play a Riddler and flash in Phelia, which overall seems fine. This is not getting me to something that just immediately removes Hexing Squelcher. So maybe I can, hey, look at that. You know what, never mind. Now it seems kind of hard for me to lose. I was already very, very far ahead, to be clear. But once this Hexing Squelcher is in play and I have Quantum Riddler with this many resources, I'm so good. I think I'm okay doing this and tapping out for it. I just get to untap and swords and have Force of Will and whatnot. And I'm just very good at that point. So, swords, Hexing Squelcher. I will take 2 to make that happen. Now that I've guaranteed that that's happened, let's just kind of look and see what else we have. No. Fetch. I'm very low on fetchables here, so I guess I'm glad I added another thing to the deck. I think I will Phelia attack, blink out Solitude, deal my opponent 2. God damn it, this is another at the beginning of the next end step. So the Sundial trick doesn't actually work on this. Fuck. Whatever. I counter it. Do I? Yeah, this is a little frustrating. It's fine. I'm winning so hard that it doesn't matter that I have made this mistake. So I just gave my opponent a free removal spell for Phelia. Opponent has Leyline Binding, which I guess I will counter. Yeah. I think I'm of the opinion that trying to play with Sundial is just so much worse than trying to play with the much more mana efficient Stifles and Consigns. Bam bam. Any order. I'll keep the Ponder in hand. Opponent's got a land drop. Move the Riddler off of that ley line. I'm also in danger of just timing out while I dirtle around. I would like to end this game. Force of Will that. Otherwise this stops 2 Urza Sagas. There's more stock up. So I use 2 to activate Saga. I have 2 other mana, so I can cast a Ponder. Swords is fine. No Ponder ability. Play Saga. I don't need to Swords that right now. I will probably Swords it, but I don't need to do it right now. There are scarier creatures out there. Opponent fetches and surveils. Saying no to a Taiga? Sure. I'm just gonna take this hit. I don't know that I really need to remove that creature immediately when I can just do this and see if there's something worse coming on their turn. So both of these trigger. I will make a friend with this one. I could get a Dreadnought and keep it, but I think that's worse than just skateboarding. Tap down some random land. Make another friend. 3 mana, stock up. Alright. Some of the Sundial interactions were very much not favorable for us, but we just buried our opponent in cards. GG's. Alright, watching that game play out, I think I'm going to put the Null Drifter back in and go down on a Dreadnought. My opening hand is fine. It is going to be difficult for me to win a game in 5 minutes. Not impossible, but difficult. And I think I have to give up, like, Force of Will bluff time. Literally whatever this is, I Prismatic Ending it, just for clock purposes. And the hope is that I can just play an easy Urza Saga game after the first couple of turns. I probably use my next turn cycle. Well, maybe not. Backstreet keeps a card on top, and I would love to see no creature. It is a creature. I need to brainstorm. My hand is terrible. I just have every land known to mankind. Jeez. I don't have the time to think about this. I think I'm just going to pass the turn there with the intention of fetch Brainstorm. It's possible I should keep an Ancient Tomb to play towards brainstorming into exactly Wrath of the Skies immediately. The opponent's just going to do one thing here. Then I will Meticulous Archive. I'm going to say no to Force of Will. It's a fine card. It's just not what I'm looking for when I'm behind on board. Hydroblast is okay. Going to Brainstorm. If it hits a red blast, it does not. Okay, Triumph on top is awesome. So Ancient Tomb down there, Triumph down there, make Plains as a land drop, pass turn. I can Sword something, Hydroblast something else, and then Miracle, Triumph of St. Catherine, which all sounds great. Yes, that's not particularly threatening as it stands. All right, opponent does not attack into potential Phelia. I'm going to take out the Ocelot Pride, reveal this. Cast for Miracle cost. Swords will just take it out of play, unfortunately. That just is what it is. But otherwise, I have a 5/5 lifelinker in play, which is sweet. Awkward, I'll Brainstorm in response to that. Okay, Null Drifter, pretty bad right now. I'll redraw whatever the other one is, so that has resolved. My opponent can use that to Swords here uncounterably. That's really good. All right, I take some damage. Urza Saga is a thing. Go to Punchies. In for 5 with lifelink. 19. I think I just stock up here. I think I just want to find more removal spells. Nope. I think I will take double stock up then. Second one. Is it like one Wrath of the Skies in this game is over, right? Like I Wrath of the Skies and keep a Triumph. That didn't happen. I will take a Ponder and a land that doesn't disappear. The shuffle for the Ponder is also relevant. Oh, Broadside's bad. That just kills me, right? Just throw Scion of Draco. That was not something that I was expected, and my opponent would have been protected from my Hydroblast via Voice of Victory anyway. That is unfortunate. I thought we were going to win that one. Alrighty. GG's. Neat round in terms of rules interactions with Sundial. Alright. Opening hand. 1 Ancient Tomb. Not gonna cut it. And this is what I'm talking about. I feel like I don't get to assemble the cool things I'm trying to do. I just think I'm an Urza Saga deck that has Force of Will backing things up. I guess I keep this. I can either Pithing Needle, Wasteland in the dark, or keep Skateboard to give these construct tokens haste. I feel like the entire hand loses to Wasteland, so I'm going to keep Pithing Needle. And then which of these two? I think I'll put the Skateboard back in the deck with the intention of searching it out. Actual Factual Stomping Ground. This is some of my kind of bullshit. Salute you, opponent. I think I can Force of Will something better than that. So, Saga. I'm still going to name Wasteland, even though I don't think my opponent has it. I imagine that they don't have anything that this interacts with. And so at this point, I am playing this as that, like, tiny bit of insurance for if I am wrong. Another Stomping Ground. Notably, I'm an Ancient Tomb deck, so that's a thing. Invigorate resolves. Mutagenic Growth resolves. Berserk does not. Let's Force of Will that. Now, opponent could decide to sacrifice it. to proliferate and then deal me another 7. They did not. So at this point, I can now block Cacophony Scamp with an Urza Saga token. Heartfire Hero is another one of these similar cards. So I have to keep tapping this Ancient Tomb. I need the bodies. I did find Island. I think I need this body. But I'm dealing myself an exceptional amount of damage here. Don't have any cool Phyrexian Dreadnought. Tricks. Tap down one of these. Throw down a land. Throw down the Construct token. I could attack my opponent for 9 and go, hey, you don't have it. I think I just wait them out. It's weird because Berserk Trample is a thing. There's another land drop that is probably good for me overall. And hardcasting a Spirit Guide, yeah. Alright, Force of Will is great. I think Force of Will means that I get to start attacking with one of these. I don't think I take 2 to play Riddler. Another Scamp. I think I let that resolve. I think I am afraid of a pump spell getting things through. An opponent is not trying to push individual points of damage right now, which is great for me. I'm looking for additional lands that don't hurt me at this point. Flooded Strand qualifies. I just need this blue mana. If I attack with both, my opponent has to block both or they die. At which point I can only take 3 on the crackback. No, sorry, they only need to block 1. I think I only attack with 1. I misspoke. So this does deal me 1. I go to 10. I don't think I pay life to stock up. I think next turn, I think I'm pitching this to Force of Will and then playing Riddler, potentially with haste. All right, cool. Opponent is not attacking. I will go to 9. Get Archive. Sundial is not what I'm looking for right now. Let's send that to Graveyard. That seems good. I could pay 4 life to Riddler. Really like to just pay 2 life to Riddler. I think I am just continuing to attack for 5. An Elvish Spirit Guide goes down. I think I will just shift this to a different permanent. I have double Force of Will as of right now. I can also just... Now, I think I'm going to call this good. And then next turn, it's pretty likely that I can just take some damage, play a Riddler with haste, either via Warp or tapping 2 Ancient Tombs, and be good from there. It's another land. That's not what my opponent wants. So I will go ahead and block one of these. I don't think it really matters which one it is. My opponent berserks the Heartfire Hero. So that will make it trade with a token. Nah, I'll just kill you. Pitch stock up here. Go down to 8, and then I'll go down to 7. And the additional triggers here are not lethal. And now I just need to make sure that I have lethal through a Dryad Arbor blocker, which I do, right? So I attack with a hasty Quantum Riddler, and then I have 5 in the air and 4 on the ground, guaranteed. I do have to take 2 in order to do this. So draw my card, move Skateboard, and then the sneaky Dryad Arbor does not get us. GG. So any additional removal I can find here is great. I'm going to say the Lifelinker is fine. The Hydroblast is fine. Wrath of the Skies seems solid. And then some amount of this stuff is probably playable as well. I do not want Pithing Needle. I assume that goes. Maybe I should not have put that in the deck. I've boarded it out most rounds. It feels like I should just board out Dreadnought Sundial. At which point my Urza Saga package is pretty bad. I probably need to keep at least one of these to pair with Consigns. If I do this, probably take this on, and I'm just fully playing Quantum Riddler deck. Lavinia is pretty good too, though. Like, I could also just get rid of Phelia and just say, I will eventually kill you with something, and make my opponent's free spells way worse. Phelia is not necessarily going to successfully ambush my opponent's creatures in combat anyway. I have a Force of Will. That's okay as a starting point. Chancellor of the Forge and Leyline of Resonance this time. Opponent is gaming. The Leyline is going to be good against my Force of Will opener, because my opponent just gets a copy of whatever nonsense they do. My consign is going to feel very necessary to counter the leyline trigger. That is a scamp. Do I counter that? That's a much scarier creature than the 1/1 goblin token. I think I counter that. I'll pitch stock up here. I get to it slower than I get to Riddler. My land situation is incredibly awkward, by the way. I can't really play this ETB tapped land now that my opponent has started with Leyline of Resonance, and it's not in my deck to be able to get out with Scalding Turn. Drawing the Tundra here is actually pretty good. It means that I can hold open, consign this turn, and potentially Riddler next turn. Opponent's just going to love tap me for 1 and chill. Until I counter something with this consign, I think I just have to leave it up. I think I'm going to leave it up while getting Saga in play. I'm much more scared of this deck when it starts with that leyline in play. I'm not really good at getting that out of play. I am hopefully just taking 1 here again. This is great. My opponent hasn't gone for it yet. All right, Force of Negation is a solid pickup. I think I'm just going to fetch a Tundra now so that nothing weird happens on my opponent's turn in terms of like I fetch and they respond to it, and then I'm caught with less mana for something like Consign. Opponent fetches. There is a Dryad Arbor. That is fine. I think I am not tapping out because Consign is so important here, so I think I am just taking 2 unless my opponent starts doing the thing. That is a Blazing Shoal, which I think I immediately try to counter. So let's force that, pitch the Quantum Riddler, and leave this on the stack so that if my opponent responds while this is still on this attack, I could potentially consign multiple things. And we will just replicate this multiple times because I don't have anything else to do with my mana. Or rather, not enough mana to do something else. So let's consign this and then hope we're not dead. Mutagenic Growth can double up on damage. And that is a Berserk that is copied twice. So I'm going to eat 20 damage there. Opponent got it fair and square through 2 pieces of interaction. GG. Can I take that leyline out of play? Technically, yes. Wrath of the Skies for a very large amount of mana. Hate that. Do I need another consign? Maybe I need another consign. It's very important for the leylines in particular, even if it's not great versus a lot of other stuff. I'll make this swap. That brings me up to 3 of them. This is turn 2 Lavinia. Lavinia shuts off my opponent's free spells. I'm gonna hope this is good enough. I have to play a turn 1 ETB tapped land. Hopefully that's fine. Like, hopefully I can use this to find a piece of spot removal or something to supplement Lavinia. Lavinia on her own will not fully carry this matchup. And like, holding open consigns while trying to do Urza Saga stuff is a little rough. All right, Chancellor of the Forge begins in play. And I'm not in a position, to immediately be working towards, like, turn 1 Urza Saga, work towards getting a Dreadnought. Goblin token comes crashing in. I just take 1. That's great. Ooh, a Dreadnought. I think I play Lavinia first. But that was a rather good draw. I'm quite happy picking that up. All right, cool. No, like, fake attack into it or anything. I think my win condition is attack with Dreadnought twice. I don't think I'm going to attack into, like, known Dryad Arbor here. I think I'm just going to go Dreadnought, consign this trigger, and not attack. I hold open a consign here, which is something. Let's see what my opponent does on their turn. They are down to 17 for a Heartfire Hero. That's happening. Here is Urza's Saga. Here's Skateboard. Tap down a Heartfire Hero. Equip a Skateboard. Go in for 13. Opponent to 4. Phyrexian Dreadnought almost certainly kills them next turn. I will probably block with Lavinia, given the chance to do so. But I have a consign for a Heartfire Hero trigger, which is one of the easier ways that I can die here. Ooh, that's a Legolas's Quick Reflexes. Occurs. So now my opponent can nuke my Lavinia, but with no mana, I just consign this trigger, right? And then don't open them up to it. That seems correct to me. Same targets on that trigger, and we do get a match win. This has been a relatively rough league so far. Let's see if we can get some play points back in the next round. GG. All right, opening hand has 5 lands here. This is not great. I will mulligan this one. Second hand is reasonable, but unexciting. The time to cast cantrips is a luxury that you don't always have when games just start out like this. So it's possible I ponder looking for an answer to this Tamiyo and it is already transformed by the time that I find my Swords to Plowshares to remove it. Nah, none of those cards address a Tamiyo properly. There is a Dreadnought that I don't have anything to pair with as of right now. And I really don't want to do something like Force of Negation on a Brainstorm. But I have one Prismatic Ending that answers a transformed Tamiyo. So if a Brainstorm goes on the stack, I probably just need to do it. Oh, well that dodges Force of Negation. Hate that for me. It is a funny looking Archon of Cruelty. My opponent doesn't have more land drops though. That's the good news. The bad news is kind of everything else about this situation. My hand is just clunky. I can try to set up Sundial Dreadnought over a couple of turns. My entire hand just kind of does nothing right now. I can redraw all of this crap and play Urza Saga this turn and work towards Sundial Dreadnought that way. I suspect that's worse than just playing Phelia next turn. I'll send back both Sundials and intend on surveilling in this turn cycle. Basically everything in my hand was non-blue for Force of Negation purposes, which was relatively inconvenient. And now the second land drop is here, so clue cracking and whatnot is live. Let's see what opponent's doing with their Delta. That's just going to be a draw 2. I don't think I can counter that with this chilling here, but like everything is very awkward right now. Let's fetch and surveil. Immediately punished for not countering it. I might need to just pick this up in case the Archon slips into play. I think I am going to do that. I think I don't want my lands to disappear. Thoughtseize is bad. I can tap out for Force of Negation here and not let my opponent know my hand. If I cast this Phelia, I just lose it to Archon of Cruelty. So I think I'm just going to let this resolve. But also Tamiyo minus on my Thoughtseize again is not great. So I lost the Phelia there. Yeah, and opponent's just going to pick it up again. That is perfectly reasonable. Anytime I play a deck that's not a Dimir deck, I am just wondering why I am not playing Dimir. I've lost stock up. Opponent's just going to let Force of Negation rot in my hand without the blue card next to it. And I've already used my Surveil land, so this doesn't represent anything else. Alright. Well, that's a thing. There's Sundial. And I think how this lines up is I play a Phyrexian Dreadnought, and it just eats it to Archon of Cruelty. Opponent surveils. But I now don't have a blue card to stop a reanimate effect. Alright, it is a Force of Will instead. Sure. So I can work towards Urza Saga Pithing Needle on Tamiyo. Tamiyo goes to 3. We got Wasteland too. Sure. Play Dimir decks, you get it all. Getting so savagely outvalued here. Yeah. Like awkward, right? I am having to jump through hoops for my win conditions here. And I can't even deploy the Dreadnought immediately. I'm kind of in this situation where I can set up my thing that kills my opponent in one shot, or I can hold open Force of Negation to not die to a reanimate effect. If I don't make proactive plays, my opponent grinds Clue and Tamiyo values. Sundial's in play. Opponent brainstorms. And if they think they have it, and they have enough mana, they can also just Tamiyo minus do Thoughtseize yet again. They're just going to keep going up with Tamiyo, which is reasonable. I will just lose to that as well. So now that Thoughtseize takes my Dreadnought, so the turn that I spent setting up Sundial is now wasted. All in all, kind of disastrous. And opponent cracks a Clue again. Chart of Course is fine. Tamiyo to 7. There's some real awkwardness there about like whether or not I attempt to flash in Phelia in response to that Chart of Course, but if I dump the Phelia into play, I don't hold open Force of Negation anymore, so I could just eat a reanimation target. And The Archon specifically would then cause me to sacrifice the Phelia. So I think if this spell does not resolve, I am likely dead. Nice. As this -7 is just a thing now. I don't... Okay. I can draw exactly land plus Pithing Needle here. And I did not. Alright. Opponent's got this one. GG. So I can play a few things that impact the graveyard. Fine with a prismatic ending for Tamiyo. I think I just give up on Sundial fully. Null Drifter can go. Whatever, we're not making money this league anyway. Let's do the fun thing. No triumphs. Go down 1, stock up. I have a splitting headache, by the way. I'm pretty sure in a previous game, when I activated the Sundial, I activated it on my main phase after doing a Phelia thing. I think as long as we activate the Sundial at the end step with the Phelia trigger online, we still get to exile our opponent's stuff permanently. So that's an angle we can take here. My opening hands have been so bad. Alright, turn 1 Grafdigger's Cage. Alright, that's a thing. Keep. This prismatic ending is pretty terrible with tapped Meticulous Archive being my only land that casts it. I think I'm clearly on Urza Saga value train here, but it has just fully felt like I've been playing Urza Saga with Force of Will this league, which is not where I want to be. I got 2 of them. The Wasteland has no power here. That Force of Will is a very bad draw. I have no blue cards to pair with it. I will put the Skateboard into play, but I can't use it immediately. Opponent surveils. Saying no to chart a course. Alright, blue card there is quite good. I don't want to be doing Urza Saga backed by Force of Will, but if I have the Force of Will in hand already, I do want to draw a blue card. Alright. Cool. Do this. So now I lose 2 lands to this Wasteland, essentially. I'm not going to get extra value out of this. And you've got the Snuff out. I just don't win without this token, right? I think I just don't win without this token. Yep. So, float a mana here. Get Pithing Needle. Put it on Tamiyo. Equip this here. And then we'll try to look for something that answers Creature Tamiyo. I guess that's fine. And we're just trying to end this game before my opponent gets to, like, Barrow-Goyf levels of mana, as that's something that could make my Grafdigger's Cage less relevant. Alright, opponent just transforms that immediately, which I'm fine with because it is currently Pithing Needled, and I'm not expecting the Dimir deck to take the Pithing Needle out of play. So that's actually a boon for me, I think. Alright, new Tamiyo. Sure. Alright, opponent's just done. Yeah, that's reasonable. GG. Good job, Grafdigger's Cage. / Pithing Needle. No sideboard changes. We shove the Sundials today. I die to a combo hand if I keep this, but this has the ability to grind in a more fair matchup, so I guess that's fine. It's just like, how bad is the Tamiyo bullshit and Barrow-Goyf stuff on any given hand? I am just gonna play Tundra, I think, despite the fact that my opponent is a Wasteland deck. I think I need flexibility. I do not want 2 of these cards, right? I don't know, maybe I just... Bam, bam, bam. Not a great set of cards. The Sundial just not being a generically good card like Tamiyo is rough. And this dodges Force of Negation, which is annoying. So that Atraxa is now in the graveyard forever. I might just stock up here and try to look for another counter spell. I don't really know that Force of Negation by itself is going to be enough. None of those are counter spells. Sundial is not a standalone good card. I'll take a Swords, and with 3 lands in hand, I will probably just take the blue card. The kind of annoying thing here is that this does put me to 8 cards in hand, so I am just discarding 1. Maybe that's a reason to not cast Stock Up immediately. I don't think I counter that, but I suspect that my opponent is stuck on lands, and countering it could be reasonable. I just have 1 counter spell and a bunch of cards that are not particularly strong right now. Alright, opponent did find a new land drop. Urza Saga is awkward. I guess it works towards things that are important, but it like makes Brainstorm very noticeably worse. Can't fetch afterwards, and this also means that I don't hardcast Force of Negation. I have to pitch cast it. I think I'm just going with it anyway. Both things that it represents are fine. I don't literally lose to the Atraxa hitting play. I don't even know who this is. Not Vision, is it? I don't think so. There's a Tamiyo. I will swords that. That can resolve. Ready for Brainstorm in response? Oh no, they didn't have it. Nice. That's a big deal for me. So this activates Urza Saga. I can still Pithing Needle and Brainstorm in an emergency. So Needle resolves. Shut off the backside of Tamiyo. And on my next turn, I get Grafdigger's Cage. I have a Force of Negation to help make it through this turn cycle. 6 Underground Seas in hand. Bag of bricks. Thoughtseize is bad. I think I have to let that resolve. Presumably it takes Force of Negation, and then I try to Brainstorm for another piece of interaction. Alright, that happens. Sick. The game just continues. I kind of want to Brainstorm, but if my opponent randomly has Bowmasters, that's pretty awkward, huh? 2/2 Construct. Nice. There is a Consign. The opponent has 2 of these pointed at my search ability, so no Grafdigger's Cage for me. But I still have 6 power in play, so not the end of the world. Let's go ahead and Brainstorm now. Okay. That stuff's good. So I want to end up with 4 blue cards in hand, which probably means hiding Swords to Plowshares on top of my library. And then next turn, I maybe draw it, depending on what exactly happens here. Sure. I still have a threat in play. It's a 2/2, but it's a threat. I think I'll just draw the swords. Then I will, I think, fetch. Running very low on fetchables here, which was something I anticipated early on in deck building. Those are fine cards. Phelia Riddler is a thing I can try to set up. Saga. Lock up. Play Saga. In 4/2. Good. I think good. I may be playing too conservatively here, but it feels like having 2 Force of Will effects up at all times is totally reasonable. There's already a creature in the graveyard. I don't care about this. You can block for 2 with that or loot, whatever. I'm good with that. So land drop. If I stock up, I don't have swords available because this is a tapped land. I don't think I want to cast this. Blue card. I think I just take another Urza Saga. Sorry, Sundial. Yeah, so my basic island is gone, so this is Meticulous Archive, so I can't cast Ponder immediately. My opponent is just legitimately blocking 2 fog, 2 points of damage. You've got it. Alright, so there's the loot. And Atraxa to Yard. All pass turn. I have 2 Force of Wills available, and I get Grafdigger's Cage next turn. Or I could just go for Skateboard and go for the Throat. Surveil. Okay, there's the concession. And we did manage to put a couple of wins on the board at the tail end of this league. GG's. All right, post-nap, post-headache Phil here for a conclusion. So let's ignore my poor play mistakes and just focus on the deck list itself. Overall thoughts on the deck list. I really like the changes that I made to the deck that I went over in the intro. I think I improved what was sended to me, minus the Null Drifter that I think was just too ambitious. I think if I played this again, this would be the very first card that I cut. And then the next thing that I would do would be try to figure out how I justify playing this deck. And I don't mean this with a negative connotation, so let me explain. We're an Urza Saga deck that has a relatively light artifact count. So is there a way that I could increase the number of artifacts in this deck to make it so that Urza Saga backed by Force of Will is better than it already is? Is there a way that I could better take advantage of Ancient Tomb, which the other Stiflenought decks are not currently doing? because I ran into some things like Quantum Riddler not being castable off of something like Island Plains Ancient Tomb, and I think that came up multiple different times. So, and this is just kind of spitballing, I wonder if we can go down on some cantrips or something without decreasing the number of blue cards in the deck significantly, and be able to lean into the artifact side a little more and do a few more things that are Ancient Tomb fueled that can help us sort of catapult ahead in the early game. Another spot of tension throughout the league was the split between the instant speed stuff and the non-instant speed stuff. So for example, if I tap out early to play a Sundial, then I don't have the consign up for my opponent's Fantasticar. And this is not a play pattern you have when you instead are using something like Dress Down and Doorkeeper Thrall to do end of turn lines that go into your Dreadnought lines. I wonder if this deck wants something like Tamiyo over like 3 Ponders and 1 Null Drifter, because the Tamiyos are a blue card that pitch to Force of Will, and Tamiyo aggressively, very, very aggressively grows Urza Saga. Tamiyo clue tokens would be one more thing that you could then leave up on your opponent's turn as something to do so that you can hold up your consigns and Phelias and hardcast Force of Negations and whatnot a little bit more easily. I'm not sure if you can cut the Ponders because you are kind of a deck that is trying to assemble various A plus B combos, but it may just be that these 4 cards becoming Tamiyo, which are synergistic with Urza Saga and on par with the other things your deck wants to be doing, just makes your deck better overall. Plus, then you could have some really funny lines like, okay, attack with Tamiyo, make a clue, brainstorm, resolve brainstorm, fetch, shuffle, Tamiyo transform trigger on this attack, still just end your turn because you don't want it to transform. There might be some funny lines available there. It is also possible that in the 75, there should be like 1 more Urza Saga tutor target. Skateboard wasn't in the original deck, I believe, and I added that in, and I was very, very happy doing so. But especially in the games where I would board out a couple of Phyrexian Dreadnoughts, which didn't happen every time. It's not like Dreadnought was the worst part of the deck or anything, just like super, super clearly. But when the Dreadnoughts got boarded out, unless Grafdigger's Cage was coming in, I had just very, very few options for what I could be doing there. So maybe you want some sort of Aether Spellbomb type thing that can cycle at worst and can take a Murktide or Barrowgoyf out of play temporarily at best. The Fantasticar metagame is putting a ton of pressure on Legacy right now, and I think that's very, very clear. We don't get to be the slightly more efficient flow state deck ourselves. I think our instant and sorcery counts just don't work for that, especially if we end up adding Tamiyo to the deck. So we're forced to play Stock Up instead, which is fine as an Ancient Tomb deck, but it does make us less efficient overall. And the Dimir magic of the format right now, that is just Thoughtseize, Force of Will, Daze, Flow State, Tamiyo, all that sort of stuff, is just so hyper efficient that it's very easy for them to knock off balance these decks like this one that are trying to do something that is a little bit cute. So overall, I think this is a better deck than this league represented, because I don't think I played particularly well. Sometimes you get a headache while you're recording. Thank you, North Carolina weather and temperature swings. But I think there is a decent amount of potential here, despite the, I think, 2-3 finish today. With that, I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. I'm going to get this edited, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I hope it was enjoyable despite some play mistakes on my end. See ya!